I have spent a lot of time lately watching Mickey Mouse. You see, I have a 3-year-old daughter who can't seem to get enough of this one specific show called Mickey Mouse Road Rally. It's pretty awful, and it's just gotten worse due to the sheer number of times I've seen it. But this got me thinking, what were my favorite Mickey Mouse games? I know there's been a ton, but to be honest, not a whole lot have really stuck with me, except 2. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about Sega's Castle of Illusion and Capcom's Magical Quest, both starring the one and only Mickey Mouse. The early days of the Genesis saw a lot of really cool games coming out, and I had one of those friends who seemed like they had them all. Every time I'd go to his house, he'd have something new, but this ended up being pretty good for me, because it gave me a chance to play a lot of things I'd probably never try. Castle of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse was one such game. Released in 1990 as a joint effort between Sega and Disney, Castle of Illusion opens with Mickey and Minnie living a carefree life when an evil witch named Miserabelle swoops in and kidnaps her, whisking her off to a castle in the distance. Time for Mickey to take her down. Mickey is initially only armed with a simple, yet powerful, butt stomp that makes enemies explode into a cloud of sparkles. But he can also pick up apples, marbles, and a few other objects that can be thrown as projectiles. Mickey makes his way through a number of doors inside the castle, each leading to a unique world. You never know what's going to be behind the next door. Now, when this came out, we'd mostly seen games with darker, more serious tones released for the Genesis. Then suddenly we have Castle of Illusion with its super bright graphics, taking us to unique worlds made out of toys, books, and cakes. It was kind of unlike anything we'd seen at the time and was probably the best looking game on the Genesis early on. Each level is divided up into several sub-levels, taking us even deeper into the weirdness. Giant cups of tea, flooded mystical ruins, clock towers, just tons of cool areas. Each level culminates with a battle against a boss that can often look like the stuff of nightmares, like this freaky Jack-in-the-Box clown. Castle of Illusion is just packed with little touches and effects that really made you appreciate the jump to 16-bit. Mickey looks and moves great. I love that the version of the character here is more of a classic take, swaying and dancing in place when he's just standing there. Although he tends to move pretty slow, and I've seen a lot of people complain that his jump speed is like moving through molasses, but I've never really had an issue with it. It gives you a chance to be very deliberate with your movements, and it takes just a bit of time to get used to. The soundtrack by Shigenori Kamiya is pretty great. Some tracks exude a Mickey Mouse Club kind of vibe, especially the Toyland track, while others feel more epic than you'd expect from a game like this. It's very apparent that the team behind this game was having a great time with the still fresh new hardware. Castle of Illusion was also released for the Master System and Game Gear. These versions retain some basic elements, but for the most part, they were actually way different, with lots of gameplay revolving around picking up and throwing objects. Now, I haven't played the Game Gear version, but the Master System version is good enough to stand on its own, with its tight controls and much higher difficulty level. Seriously, this game is pretty tough, especially this chocolate bar version of the Yellow Devil from Mega Man. Finally, Castle of Illusion was remade for the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and PC in 2013. I thought this was a pretty decent remake, adding some variation to the overall experience, like switching between 2D and 3D gameplay. Not to mention, they got Sully from Uncharted to narrate the whole thing. That's kinda cool, right? This was definitely a labor of love for developer Sega Studios Australia, and unfortunately, one that would be their final game.
Miserable taunted Mickey with her cruel laugh, but perhaps she was secretly worried about how close he was getting.
Hey, haven't I seen a videotape of the remake before? Anyways, there was a couple of follow-ups to this game in the form of Quackshot and World of Illusion. Quackshot is okay, while I really haven't played much of World of Illusion. It actually wouldn't be till a couple of years later that I'd stumble upon a favorable review of a new Mickey Mouse game for the Super Nintendo that looked like it might capture the same feel as Castle of Illusion. And it was from Capcom to boot, so based on their pedigree when it came to games based on Disney properties, I decided to give it a go. Magical Quest, starring Mickey Mouse, was released in 1992 and was Capcom's very first game based on a Disney property on the Super Nintendo. Instead of Minnie being kidnapped, this time it's Pluto who gets taken hostage by Mickey's longtime rival, Pete. Well, he's known as Emperor Pete in this one. I don't know. What's really interesting is how immediately familiar Magical Quest feels. Kind of like a mixture of both the Master System and Genesis versions of Castle of Illusion. At the very least, I think it's pretty apparent that the team behind Magical Quest wasn't at least a little influenced by Sega's game. You butt stomp on enemies. Oh, I'm sorry, I mean leapfrog. You pick up and throw these blocks as your main form of attack. There's even giant apples. Oh, I'm sorry, I mean giant tomatoes. You descend into a forest and fight this segmented boss that looks a lot like this. It's not till after finishing the first level that things get switched up and Magical Quest gets its own identity. At this point, you get your first of 3 costumes, transforming things into a kind of Mega Man-styled affair. First up is the Magician costume that allows you to shoot a charge shot from your hat. This is way more convenient than having to rely on picking up enemies. But you gotta keep an eye on your energy meter down here, because when that runs out, then no more magic. Next is the Firefighter uniform. I'm sure you can guess what this one does. Yeah, it's just a hose that puts out fire. But it can also push these giant boulders, allowing you to access certain areas. And finally, third is the Mountaineer costume. Okay. Hold up a minute. I'm gonna state this right now, right here. This is the best part of the entire game. Are you a fan of Bionic Commando? Of course you are. Well, this costume gives Mickey a grappling claw that turns Magical Quest into a 16-bit Bionic Commando. You throw a claw that catches onto platforms, allowing you to swing from ledge to ledge. Heck, even swinging back and forth, Mickey has similar animation frames as Bionic Commando. Once you've acquired all 3 costumes, you can freely change between them for the remainder of the game. Magical Quest is a pretty decent looking game, but it lacks that unique flair that Castle of Illusion had in spades. I guess you could say it looks a lot like what most of Capcom's games on the Super NES look like, but it definitely has some fun with Mode 7 on several of the bosses. Music-wise, there's a couple of rousing tracks, but for the most part, the soundtrack is pretty nondescript, which is too bad since I really love Capcom's soundtracks for this system, even though they always were smothered in reverb. Magical Quest saw 2 sequels, The Great Circus Mystery and the Super Famicom-only Magical Quest 3, but I've never played either of these. These games were also ported to the Game Boy Advance years later, with the third game finally seeing the light of day outside of Japan. While both of these games have stuck with me, I feel like the only one that's really endured to this day is Castle of Illusion. I mean, I truly love that game, and it's one of the best early games on the Genesis. Heck, one of the best games on the system, period. I revisit it every once in a while, and it's never gotten old. Magical Quest, however, is just okay. It's definitely worth playing just for the Bionic Commando style level, which is the main reason I've held onto it. Time to go watch Road Rally again.